All right. Welcome to another episode of the On with Shahan Podcast. I have Brian Sharp, aka Hotep Jesus. He returns to the podcast. I got an amazing response last time he was on. My friends, my family, people who had never heard of him, who hadn't seen him on Joe Rogan, they're like, man, they're a fan now. They really loved all the stuff that you had to say. And so you've been touching on a ton of interesting topics lately. And like I said last time, I really think you have such a unique perspective, and you look at things from all the different perspectives, and you could put yourself in everybody's shoes in terms of how they're thinking, their thought process, and how they could be potentially influenced by different people. And so, I'm really excited to dive into that. And I just wanted to thank you again, man, for joining. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me. You're cool, man. We met out in Vegas.
Right.
Yeah, you cool dude, man. A lot of people I'm like, but nah, you definitely got the right vibe. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a few topics here that we want to cover. We can cover anything that you want, but there's a few things that I did want to cover. Some stuff you've been tweeting about, some stuff in your newsletter as well. I bought your book and I've been reading that, and it just like everything you're doing now makes so much more sense. And there's a lot of wisdom you have in there. I recommend anybody to read that book, and it's a really quick read. It's a really easy read. And there's a lot of knowledge in there, but
that was all of my dark secrets up until that point in my life. So like I pretty much did a brain dump on marketing and what I understood marketing was outside of what people traditionally teach.
Right.
Yeah.
So you probably have another 3 books you could write on these topics.
I could. I'm not though. I realized how much damage I caused with that book, and how many people I enabled. So I think if I write on the marketing topic again, I had to be very careful in how I write about it, because I gave away a lot that I probably shouldn't have. But a lot of people have taken my work and done some nefarious things with it, which beforehand I knew was a possibility. But I just see like stupid stuff. Like, in the book I teach how to write so people can digest things faster,
right.
Like line by line. And I see people taking that and then doing something that I feel is inauthentic with it. So I say, write line by line, and I see people truncating their lines into separate lines. And I'm like, that's all one sentence. It's cool if it goes into the second line and it's still one sentence.
Right.
But, I start to be careful with the next one. But I'm going to be releasing a book on politics and culture first, and then I'll probably circle back. I think the next time I do a book on marketing or business, it'll be after a successful exit or a really good, successful raising of funds.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I was thinking the same thing as I was reading it. I was like, because the reason I really resonate with you is it's something I'm learning more about myself. It's the psychology. I really get the psychology of like the things that are going on. And then you see, like, if you look at Fox News and you look at CNN and you look at MSNBC, they're looking at the same event and they're all saying exactly the opposite things.
Yeah.
And then the things that you do have to do with psychology, the things that you have to do on Twitter, it's like, how do you get these groups? How do you get enemies? How do you get emotion to come out? How do you find what the pains are with different people? And through that, you could start being really effective, because now you're talking about things and you're thinking about things and you're saying things that are on the minds of those people at an emotional level. And so you can really affect those people. And I think that's being done right now at a large scale. Like, those that are in power are looking at this and saying, how can we manipulate the people with fear? How can we drive something with an agenda? If you really think about it, the country has like hundreds of millions of people. Isolated incidences, if they're highlighted and continue to like have the spotlight on them, can be a huge deal, even though it's like a very small thing of the population. So from your perspective, like if you look at the state of the world, 10,000 foot view, what's going on behind the scenes kind of at that level? Like there's this like matrix going on right now. Like, what do you think is happening? Who's pulling the strings? Where are they driving this towards?
Yeah. So a lot of that I can't speak on because I'm afraid of the black vans that might appear outside of my house.
Got it.
But I study history as a hobby. I wouldn't say I'm a historiographer or I'm a history guru, because by no means I'm not. But I read several different perspectives on history. And at 10,000 feet in the air, I don't see anything new in our era. The only thing I see is new that is technology. Mm-hmm. Technology makes it easier to control people through their emotions and to disseminate useful and maybe destructive information. So 10,000 feet in the air, I see Rome, I see Greece, I see ancient Egypt, I see Canaan, I see the Soviet Union, I see communist Russia, I see especially communist Russia, and we're talking about the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. Like, I don't see Democrats and Republicans. I see Bolsheviks and Mensheviks. They're both communist socialist parties. They just get there a different way. So the Mensheviks want to do it in a very coercive, peaceful manner, and the Bolsheviks want to do it via violence. And we're seeing that now where the Bolsheviks, aka Antifa, aka liberals and progressives, and the riots and so forth, right?
Right.
But the conservatives do it a different way, which is more closely aligned to Mensheviks. So I don't see anything new, which is why I'm not too concerned, because I think when we're dealing with cycles, it's like, well, if we understand the cycle, we know how to break it. We know how to get away from it. And you also don't have to be a victim of these cycles. You can operate outside of these cycles. You can use them to your benefit to free people mentally and physically and so on and so forth. But I used to see a lot of bad. Today, well, here's human nature says we fear what we don't understand, right? So because I understand our world today, I don't have much fear. I'm like, oh, I know what's going on and I know what's going to happen next, which is why we have the podcast Hotep's Been Told You every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. The phrase Hotep's Been Told You came from us telling people what was coming next. And it's not like I'm Nostradamus.
Right.
I understand pattern recognition.
Yeah, and that's something I learned from you last time too. I don't do this because I love futuristic stuff. I don't study history enough. And that's something like, bad on me. I need to start seeing history because, to your point, if you see these different patterns, you're like, oh, I know what's going on. And then plus you've seen the stuff that's going on in front of you because you could do it too. You could do the same stuff that they're doing right now if you understand what they're doing. Yeah. And no, I totally agree with that. But another thing that leads into is I don't think the masses know what's going on. Some of them do. Some of them aren't saying anything. I know a lot of people that just don't want to get involved, and that's a large majority of people. And there's these
majority,
right? Yeah, and there's these extremes that are really vocal about different things, and it seems like there isn't a solution. But I think it's just the silent majority just needs to speak up and say, "Guys, enough. Let's all be adults. What are we doing here? Why are we yelling at each other? It's like a bunch of children talking to each other. My team versus your team." Like, why does that matter? If something bad happens to the country, you understand that's bad to all of us, right? And so I don't think they understand that. So you always have a good perspective on this. So in your perspective, like, how do you see this solution playing out? What's Hotep's plan for America?
Yeah. So, for example, like you said, what's bad for the country is bad for all of us, right? So that's my argument with conservatives. I say, well, do you realize what's good for the Black community is good for America? If we were able to lift people out of poverty, they contribute to the economy. More money in the economy means a higher, what do they call it? Higher living, higher standard of living, higher quality of living. Yes. And that's really what we want. I think that as Americans, we are pampered and spoiled, and I love it, right? Because, I've been in other nations and I'm like, the running water here in Jamaica isn't too well unless I go to the resort, right? I've been to Africa and I'm like, it's beautiful, but the technology isn't there in some places. So the quality of living isn't as luxurious, right? So I think we have to understand that we're privileged people as Americans.
Right.
And I think that if we can put race aside and put political agendas aside and see each other as Americans and look past the partisan line, that'll help a lot, right? So I was ranting over the weekend, and conservatives were coming to me. I have a highly conservative crowd. And they were like, well, what do we do? And I said, well, step one was shut the F up. Step two is listen. There is no step three, right? Because I think people can't accomplish step 1 and 2 yet. We haven't learned to step back and listen to the other side. For example, Jeff Charles had a interview with somebody, a right-winger. And the right-winger asked him, he said, oh, how come Black people aren't voting Republican? And Jeff Charles says, well, in a lot of these places, there's no Republican to vote for. Right? And the guy goes, oh, that's a poor excuse. And it's just like, what? But the thing is, he answered before listening. He just wanted to shoot it down, you know what I mean? Because they have to stick to their talking points, right? But how do you vote for a Republican if there's none there? And then we talk about Black Republicans, and Black Republicans are constantly complaining and saying, well, we're not getting the support we need. I think somebody posted a picture of a Republican building somewhere in Virginia. And this thing looked like it hadn't been revamped in years. So there's not even funding going to Black Republicans or Republicans, period, in some of these places. So how exactly are you supposed to vote for Republicans when they don't exist, when the funding's not there? But the point is, this guy didn't listen. If he would have first listened, first shut up so you can listen, then we can get somewhere. And I think that's the problem. Nobody wants to listen to the other side.
Right.
Republicans don't want to listen to Democrats. Democrats don't listen to Republicans. Liberals don't want to listen to conservatives, and vice versa. And that's a problem, man. I think we need to start there. Compassion and empathy come after that.
Right. No, I agree with that. In my marriage, speaking of listening, so like, I don't know if you subscribe to this. It's cheesy, it's corny, but I think the love languages make sense, right? Like what each other's love languages are. And my wife always likes to be caring, and she likes to overdo that. So like, she'll like, oh, I'm doing all this and I'm saying all this and I'm doing this all for you because I'm caring for you. I was like, yeah, but if you're caring for me, here's what I'm saying. Don't do that. If you're caring for me, I don't want you to do that. Okay. She's like, yeah, but I'm doing this because I'm caring. It's like, no. You're saying you're doing something for the purpose, like, of like, you want to help the Republican parties or Blacks, conservatives get involved in the Republican Party. But to your point, if you're not listening to what they're saying, look, this is the answer. Stop bothering me. If you care, stop bothering me. Right. I'm telling you what the answer is to us not getting into conflict. And then just like looking right past us and saying, no, I know better than you. This is how it's done. I'm just going to overlook what you're saying. I feel like that's what's going on at a micro scale within parties, a bigger scale between both parties. It's just like no one's listening. So they're not even capturing the information to register it, to then have a conversation. And that's why, like, when you went on Joe Rogan or discussions like this, a long format conversation is going to force you to have these kind of discussions to actually get to something, because you have to extract information. I think that's what's not done. The information needs to be extracted, and then you need to discuss the information, but you need to have a setting in which both parties want to talk to each other. Yeah.
And even if you want to win the debate, right? So I bought this book. I think it's How to Debate Harvard Review. I forget what it was called. But one of the key things in there was listen to your opponent. If you want to win the debate, listen to their opponent, because you can use what they're saying right back against them. So a lot of people lose these arguments because they're not even listening to the other side. So you're not even on the same topic. So it's just, one wall talking to another. So even if you want to win the argument, I'll destroy people in debate because I'm going to listen. Not only that, like you said before, I'm going to listen and I'm going to put myself in your shoes. So I become you. And once I become you, I can destroy you. And so that's why I said stop at listening, because what you do after that, is probably gonna be way more productive than before listening or not listening.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I think, like when we talk about, your wife, right? There's two sides to that, right? It's one is, here's how I want to be loved, and here's how I love. So you have a way you want to be loved, and she has a way that she wants to love. So there has to be a compromise between the two. You have to, in some ways, allow her to love the way she loves, and she has to take into account how you want to be loved. Now, if she's loving you the way she wants to love, but not loving the way you want to be loved, there's an incompleteness there.
Right.
And that's where things can get weird. So that's where the compromise comes in. Now I've been with my woman damn near 20 years now. So I know this relationship inside out.
The language. Oh yeah.
I mean, we've done the highs and the lows. You know, we went from in love to I hate you to back in love again over 20 years. So if there's anybody in relationships and the hardships and the great parts about them, oh, I know.
Oh yeah. I don't know if you work at home, but with your wife or your girlfriend, I'm not sure. But I don't know if you live at home, but like we worked together initially when our relationship started first.
Oh, that's tough.
And when you don't have the languages down yet, and you're living, hanging out, and you have to have dates, and you have to set aside time, and then work and home are mixed. It makes it a disaster if you don't have that down. But now we worked, and then we went to corporate jobs, and then we came back, and now the languages, we're on par. We can communicate with each other. To that point, it had to be a compromise. She just directs that care in different places now.
Yeah.
And that's what's been good about that. And then she needs a lot of time and all that. I'm like independent. I could be introvert and extrovert.
Me too.
And so like I try to play that with her, and I compromise, and it's been so much better. It's not even, compromise is like a weird word. I think it's more just like figuring different boxes to put those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Relationships are a working environment. It's a working relationship, right? Like relationships, the love is going to fade. The beauty is going to fade. The sex is going to fade. What's left is that's going to make it work is maturity and being able to work together. That's what a relationship is about. You know, it's about learning each other. And, you know, you date somebody a year and y'all get married. You don't know that person. You think you do.
Right.
But, you know, it's all about learning each other over the course of a period of time.
Yeah. And to switch gears just a little bit, one of the things that you talked about last time, which I, again, think is why we think, at least in the same frequency, is you like Napoleon Hill. The thing that's really switched on for me has been like focusing on subconscious and the different things that are coming into my subconscious, and being able to maybe train your mind and train your subconscious to guide things to where your goals need to be. And again, I got a lot of great feedback from what you said about how, you know, whether you work on something small, whether you work on something big, you have the same amount of hours. And so many people like messaged me and said, you know, that really resonated with me. And so, you know, they were asking me like, what are things you do? And I gave them some stuff to read, but you're really, you know, way ahead of this than me. And I really look to you for guidance in these kind of areas. What are you doing to kind of train or guide your subconscious, like daily practices, things that you do?
So first of all, shout out to my dad. He introduced me to subconscious mind at childhood. So there's a lot of things I do subconsciously to keep my subconscious healthy, right? So, and I wrote a book about subconsciousness. How can you get that? I think, did you get the email after you bought my, nah, you didn't. Damn, I should probably add that to the automation sequence. Okay, so it used to be you can get access to my book. I'll make it available again. But I wrote a book on subconscious mind and exactly what you can do. I'll make that available on briansharp.co. So here's the thing. We have to first remind me to come back to the 80-20 rule. But first, remember this. Anytime something enters your five senses, we have to frame it. We can look at a piece of information and internalize it, or we can frame it. So I talk about this like with my kids, right? Like people say, well, how do you deal with the politics and stuff, you know, and the crazy things that are happening in society with your kids? Do you talk to them about it? And the answer is yes. I talk to them about a lot that some people might not talk to their kids about. And the reason why is because I want to be the first to the subconscious mind, and I want to frame it in their mind. So when they see it again, it already has a frame around it. They know how to look at it. A lot of people will see something on a line and allow it to trigger an emotion. That means it's bypassed your conscious mind. It just completely disrespected your conscious mind. Your conscious mind has to act as a bouncer for everything that your eyes see and everything your ears hear. you have to act as a bouncer and say, this is someone else's thought. I can consider it, but it doesn't have to affect me. So we can't control what goes into our subconscious because everything's going in there. It's a vacuum. But we can control how it enters our subconscious mind.
Right.
And I think that's the key, to not allow what we see to affect us. All right, so that's framing things that come into our subconscious mind. Now we have to follow the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule, as everybody knows in business what that means, but you are your most consistent thoughts. So this is my problem with Black people and Trump, because I'm like, you hop online and you're talking about this guy, which means he's a consistent thought.
Right.
He's got free real estate in your mind. Now, if you think this white man is racist and evil, why would you give him free real estate in your mind? Makes no sense. So we have to change what we think about consistently. So we are what we think about. So if we spend 80% of our time coding, we're probably going to talk to people like their computers. We're going to compare everything to Boolean statements or functions, right?
Right.
Or if then statements, depending on what language you're dealing with. If you're dealing with JavaScript, it's if else statements, right? And that's what my mind's doing now because I'm learning coding again. I used to learn C when I was a kid, but now I'm in JavaScript. So our mind is going to become what we consistently think about. So if you head to social media, look at your tweets. Your tweets are a synopsis or consensus of your most common thoughts. So if you look at your tweets or what you're about to tweet, you say, damn, this is what I am. I am these tweets. Now that could be good or bad. For a guy like me, that's good, right? Because I specialize in framing socio-political events for the public. So I have to allow my mind to work on these things consistently, right? I just don't allow them to affect me, which is why I'm able to give such clear thoughts and dissections of these things. So I think that's what we need to start with. Now, there's other things we can do too, right? But I think it really revolves around like what we put in front of our eyes. But let's talk about meditation. Because that's the key to a lot of this. And you don't have to sit down Indian style and meditate. You can meditate walking down the street. It's different forms of meditation, but a great way. So it's a meditation. What meditation is supposed to do? It's supposed to clear your mind of all thoughts, right? So people say, hey, you can't not think. Technically that's kind of true, but technically it's not. When you eat, you can't think. You can do one or the other in intervals, right? So, for example, as a mystic, we're taught never to read while we eat. It affects the digestion. It also affects salivation and how you break down these foods. So if you're reading your Twitter and you're eating at the same time, there's no way you can possibly taste your food. You're reading. Your mind can't do two things at once like that. So you got to choose one or the other. So focus intensely on that taste. And I think a great way to hijack that sense is with a teaspoon of honey. This is in my book. Take a teaspoon of honey and put it in your mouth and tell me if you could think then. The only thing you're going to be thinking about is that taste.
Yeah, right.
Right? Put a teaspoon of vinegar in your mouth or a shot of alcohol. You're not thinking about Donald Trump when you take that shot of Everclear. You're like, whoa, right? This is how you hijack the brain with taste. So I say, before you meditate, take a teaspoon of honey, put it in your mouth, then sit down and meditate. And meditate on that taste and watch how everything in the world just dissipates. Then you go into the void. You go in or outward. And, there's many different types of meditations. I don't want to get into that. But clearing the mind, the conscious mind, allows for purity to enter the subconscious mind. It purifies the mind so some of the filth doesn't so much affect the subconscious mind. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, you know, as you're thinking through these things, like, do you do like positive affirmations? There's like a goal or something you think in your mind, like, this is my goal, and that's what you're focusing on?
So I'm against affirmations.
Hmm.
And I'm against affirmations, not because they don't help, but because they're not the key.
Hmm.
Okay. The key is visualization. God or the universe or whatever you believe in, the Most High, whatever your God is, doesn't speak a language, right? So if you speak Arabic and I speak English, is God translating words? No. God is translating your desires based upon what you see in your mind.
Mm.
So instead of saying, hey, you know, I want to be rich, no, envision yourself already rich, right? So there's a meditation you can do, right? So, and the other part is selflessness, but we'll get into that next, remind me. But let's say you want a Lamborghini. You don't type out, I want a Lamborghini. You sit down, you meditate, and you drive it in your mind.
Mm.
You have to feel the wind. You have to see yourself turn on the air conditioner. You might have to go to the Lamborghini dealer and sit in one to allow this to become easier, right? Go sit in the car you want. This is what the universe is going to throw back at you. The visualization is what the ancients taught in meditation. This affirmation thing helps with, like we were talking about those conscious thoughts. Right. It helps with that. Affirmations help with those conscious thoughts, so you're not thinking negative thoughts. But what works better is visualization. I don't sit down and say, hey, I want to be a mogul or, you know, a big top tech guy. I wake up in the morning and feel it, right? So the universe communicates via vibrations. Everything on this earth is vibrating. Can't see it, but it is. When we talk, we are talking, and the voice box is vibrating, right? So everything communicates in vibrations. Everything has a frequency. So watch this. Now, once you have sat in that Lamborghini, if you don't feel them goosebumps raise, if you don't get the jitters, that's called emotion. So God or the universe or the Most High or whatever you believe in is picking up that emotional vibration. So you can say, hey, you can say all the affirmations I want, but if you don't feel that emotionally and you don't feel emotionally charged, it never communicates with the universe. Now I'm going to say this one last piece before we get into selflessness. Once you have your visualization of what you want to manifest, and it should probably take less than 6 months to manifest what you want, depending on how big, of course. But once you get that visualization in your mind, here's the hard part: dismissing it. You have to dismiss it from your mind. And that's the delivery to the cosmic. That's how you deliver your message to God. Your desire to God is dismissing it from your mind. Because when you hold it here, God's like, yo, when you want me to work on this, let me know, send it up and I'll take care of it. But when it's here, you're still worrying. You're saying, I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't have this. You're worrying about it because you haven't released it yet. When you release it, that means you're trusting in God, or you're trusting in Allah, or you're trusting in the Most High. When you hold it here, you're not trusting in your higher power. Right. If you trust in your higher power, you release it. I said, oh, it's good. God's going to work on it.
Right.
It's on.
Right.
It's here. You're holding on to it. You're harboring it. So that's the hardest part that people don't know about manifesting is letting it go.
You would call that like faith? Like that's faith in that?
Yeah. You can call it faith. Yeah, you can call it faith. I like that. Yeah. The other part is, and this is hard for people too, with selflessness. I don't want a Lamborghini for me. I want a Lamborghini to show kids they can accomplish anything they want in life. You see how I took my desire and made it selfless?
Right.
For me, it's buy my dad a boat. He's always wanted a big yacht. That's my manifestation. So I have to sit down and I've got to ride that boat. We test out a boat. We sit on the boat. We've done it. The boat's going to come, but it's not for me. It's for my dad. And a lot of times our desires don't come because they're selfish. Would God give something to somebody that's selfish? He wouldn't. And that's the other part of manifestation.
Yeah, I think, oh man, that was, everything you said there. That just, I can't wait to re-listen to that. And there's just so much you said there. Like the affirmations, I had trouble with that too, because the problem with the affirmations, I think to your point and why, I've been struggling with that is I can't explain the emotions in words. And because I can't explain it in words, like I feel it's very finite.
Yes, yes, yes.
So
Words cannot express everything that exists. Yes.
right. And that's, I think, like what you said there, like I think is the gap for me in terms of like how to get to where I want, because I'm like, there's so much more here and I can't explain it. And it's just like, but I could tell you how I feel. I can tell you what I want, like how the house looks, how people see me, what I'm doing for the community. Like for me, money is an enabler for me to make impact. That's ultimately what I want to do.
Yes.
Like, and the thing is, like, you just need a certain amount of money sometimes to like do that. Now, I don't have a lot now. I'm doing well for myself. Things are growing. That's great. And I have big goals for myself. But like, that's what I'm trying to do, is ultimately get to impact. Like however much money I have, I don't care. I'm a very simple person. I don't need too much of that stuff. I love nice things. I love food. I love going out to restaurants. I like experiences. I like hanging out with people. Like same thing as like, I want to do like some stand up on the side too. I like hanging out with people that have great minds, like comedians, people like yourself, just minds, like give me opportunities to sit and do things with these people, to talk with them, but also have the capital and the resources to now, like, I'm sick of just listening to people. Just shut up, dude. When are you going to start doing something? Like, I'm just tired of it. I just like doers and executors. All these people are complaining, saying all this shit. Who are you? What are you doing? What have you accomplished? And where's the fruit to your labor? And like that is what resources will enable us to do, right?
You see what the hoodie says?
Shut up and code. Yeah. Build, man. Do something, right?
That's it. That's it. Even if this is a simulation, code is a euphemism for do. What you brought up made me remember is Elon Musk on Joe Rogan when he talks about Neuralink, right?
Right.
And he talks about how people are limited in communication by words. But if we could link the two minds together, one can understand the other without words. And that's the relationship with God and the emotions, right? Is you can talk to God, but them emotions are going to communicate way better than these stupid words that man tries to use.
Right. No, that's spot on. And, in terms of where that's going, like the simulation and all that, it makes me really like, I have a lot of friends that are atheists. I do believe in God. I have a Christian faith, like my family, evangelical Christian. That's where I grew up. A lot of Armenians are that way, or they're like Catholic apostolic, but we're more evangelical. So, from that perspective, I hear a lot of people talk about atheism and vehement about atheism. And this goes back to about narratives and all that stuff too. It's just like, if you think about people like Elon Musk who talk about the simulation, okay, look at our technology, fast forward, we go hundreds of years, thousands of years, millions of years out. Don't you think they're going to have simulations? Okay, so if those aliens do have simulations, then they created those things. So when you say, I can't believe everybody's thinking about, that's talking about God and all this is nonsense, all that stuff. Wait, hold on. I just gave you a very simple exercise. Just go forward. And like these kind of things, I feel like people don't talk about enough of like, no, like a thing like God or a creator or a universe, something like this is very much a possibility. Why do you think it's not? And the thing about science, which I have a really big problem with right now, is when I look about politics and I look at media, and you were talking about framing, when all of these different structures have an agenda or a narrative themselves, when you say, no, science is peer reviewed. Yeah, but peer reviewed by who? Like-minded people. Yeah. Right. And if that's the case, then science isn't what you're saying science is. And the other thing is, when you look at people like Lawrence Krauss or Neil deGrasse Tyson, they're the biggest deceivers. And here's why. They know let's say they know 5% more than you. Mm-hmm. If they know 5% more than you, they could play around like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know physics. You don't know science. You don't know all these things. Therefore, I am the expert here and you can't have an opinion. And if there's a like-minded people and they're all friends and they're all the ones that funding the research, you say, like, to your point, the reason why I think there's a lot of messed up subconscious across the world is framing these different things at these different levels, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about atheists really fast. I like atheists. I think atheism is a bridge to believing in God.
Absolutely.
Right? You first have to challenge the thought of God to really come to believe in God. Because we all, even as children, we all doubt it, right? So until you enter that doubt, you're not, I don't even think you're a thinking individual if you've never had a doubt. I love that. Here's the problem. If we are in a simulation, God could, like you said, could be an alien. Right? As a mystic, we call God the unfathomable. To try to describe God is not a sin, but it's stupid. It's like, why try? You'll get nowhere. No matter how hard you try, you will get nowhere. What I say is, once you experience this higher power, then you believe, right? So some people come to me and they say, oh man, you're a master at this, you're and you play on psychology and all that stuff. And I don't talk about this a lot, but the magic of what I do is because of that higher power. It's because I'm able to manifest things through this higher power, because I understand how to tap into God. I understand how to tap into my intuition. My intuition says, make a left, don't make a right. Can you hear that voice? Some people can't hear that voice anymore. That voice speaks to me. For example, Joe Rogan, he started following me, thanks to my followers. And it didn't happen until I tweeted again and said, yo, what's up with this Joe Rogan thing? I forget what the exact tweet was. I said, what's up with this Joe Rogan interview thing? And that day he hit me up. But where did that thought come from? My intuition told me to do it, right? Another time was the 50 Cent thing. When I was younger and 50 Cent first came up, I wasn't the biggest fan of 50 Cent, but I enjoyed how much success he had. And I said, yo, I want that type of success. So I bought this poster. I was not a G-Unit fan, but he was sitting there with these stacks of money. So I used to stare at that poster and use that as visualization. Wouldn't you know, 10 years later, I was working for 50 Cent. Now, how did I do that? I get on the bus and my mind goes, yo, stand up and yell, you're on the bus with 50 Cent. Because the bus had stopped. We were in New York City. I'm on this bus and it's just eerily quiet. And I'm like, how are we on a bus with 50 Cent and it's quiet and we're in New York City? Like, it just didn't feel right. And we stopped and we were on this double-decker bus and I'm on the top and I look down at the people on my right and I just see them standing there. And something was like, yo, stand up and yell, I'm on the bus with 50 Cent. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. They invited you to the thing. So I'm fighting my mind. And then I said, man, you ain't got nothing to lose. So I stood up. I said, yo, I'm on the bus with 50 Cent. And all the people started rushing the bus. So he stood up and he was waving and they started chucking an energy drink off the side of the drink.
Wow.
The bus pulls off and his management staff literally grabs me, moves me. Now, keep in mind, when I was on the bus, they moved me to the back because of security reasons. After I do this, they grab me, throw a shirt on me, a hat on me, move me to the front. And they're like, yo, keep doing that. Fast forward the story, I ended up working for 50 Cent. We go to dinner. He calls me a genius and all these things. But these are all things that happen because I listened to that intuition. So I don't have to believe in God. I work with him. And that's what gives me my belief. So I tell people, I say, I'm not here to convince you to believe in God. But once you experience it, you'll believe.
And I have the same thought about you about atheism. And there was atheist was an apologist, and he said, like a theologian, he said, the difference between atheism and Christianity is one God, right? Because there's millions of gods. So all they disagree on is one, right? Because Christians believe that all the other ones are not, whatever. For me personally, I believe in the teachings of the Bible. And I don't like the church system. I think, like, similar to different things, like I have a problem with authority, and when people are in a herd and they're thinking the same way and that structure is all done the same way, I think there's a lot of good that it's done. But similarly, like independent thinking, you got to come to these thoughts on your own. And there's a lot of great teachings in there. But you got to get there authentically and through your independent thought. Otherwise, like, these things are really not going to drive your life.
Yeah. I'm looking up the quote now. And this is where Christians, you can tell that they're not paying attention to the Bible. But in the Bible, it says he is the God of gods. Now, if the Bible says there's a God of gods, that ain't monotheism. Your own Bible is acknowledging there are other gods. They're just saying your God is superior. So you can see who's not studying their Bible and who is really fast. So when Christians say, "Oh, there's only one God," I'm like, that's not what your Bible say.
Right. There's like Baal, and there's a bunch of other gods, like, in the Bible that are talked about: the angels, the sons of man, the sons of God, like all these things, Yeah, and that's the thing, that none of these topics are brought up. And then when, new topics come up, because people haven't studied, they don't know how to deal with new things. And then you become outdated, and you become now no longer part of the conversation. You no longer know how to speak. And, the stuff I was reading in your book yesterday actually was like, a lot of you made it concrete, the thoughts that I was trying to formulate in my mind of like, this is how all of these things happen, is because, for all these different reasons that we talked about. So
that's Deuteronomy 10:17.
Okay.
For the Lord your God is God of gods, and so on. But yeah, I just wanted to put that in there.
Right. So speaking on this topic of like, different groups pushing their agenda, I know like media, politicians, I wrote a post a couple days ago really calling out both liberals and conservatives. I channeled my inner Hotep and, really was honest about my thoughts and feelings, and just really calling out people to strike a chord, and it did. So I think I went about that because what I really did is I walked the line. I didn't cross the line. So if they said anything, I was prepared for all the counter arguments, because I didn't say what they think I said. They might have thought it or wanted me to say that. And because I don't play now a card, I'm playing independent. Not because I'm not conservative or liberal or whatever. It's just because I want to discuss each issue line by line, and you and I are going to talk about it. And I'm not going to speak for someone else. Someone else can do that. You and I can speak, right? So how can people open their eyes to the deception or the narrative or the agenda that's going on? And how can they spot it? Like, how can they see these patterns that are going on? And then like, what are some useful, like maybe research techniques or intuition, like guidance that you have to lead you towards what you think is the truth, at least at that time, whatever you researched at that moment?
Yeah. So let's talk about controversy really fast. And I want you to ask that question again, because I just want to show people something. So I think you have to challenge these narratives, right? So I wanted to create something on LinkedIn, right? I wanted to see, can I be as effective on LinkedIn as I am on Twitter, right? And so I wrote this post. It says, the hiring process is trash. There's a picture of a garbage truck in a landfill. And the caption was, your HR department sucks at their job. Here's why. And then I wrote the blog about why I think HR sucks and how they go about things wrong, because I just wasn't getting a lot of traction on some of my other blog posts, but I knew how to kind of hack the subconscious mind with this post. But I think that's what it is. No matter where you are, if you're in startups or banking or politics, find a narrative to challenge. And that often helps people, but draws a lot of attention. So I just wanted to say that. What was the question again? My bad.
So, and that was actually great insight there. The question I was asking is there's this manipulation that's going on by the media, different agendas, different narratives. How can we spot those deceptions? And how can you open eyes to people of like, hey, if you don't think I'm right about them doing this, then you can look here or look at this or look how these things unfold, because that's how you could start spotting these different patterns of how they're driving this narrative and agenda and framing that subconscious, as you were saying.
How to spot the deception. That's a tough one. Well, I think we have to suggest reading So I'm going to suggest 3 pieces of material. One is Rules for Radical by Saul Alinsky. A lot of people are familiar with that. The other one is Propaganda by Edward Bernays. And the last one is How to Watch TV News by, I think his last name is Postman, Neil Postman. I think in order for people to spot the deception, they would need examples of previous deception to create the environment for pattern recognition. You know, Scott Adams, we spoke the other day, and he talks a lot about pattern recognition, how humans basically live off of pattern recognition. So in order for somebody to recognize a pattern, you got to start the pattern off for them, right? So if you start from here and now, it's really hard. But if you start with, 1920s propaganda on and show the different examples and show how the media works from people who really worked in the media, then you can begin to open their eyes to the deception. Another way is to be ahead of the curve. So like, again, Hotep's been told you, if I tell you what's going to happen next year and it happens, you're more inclined to believe what I'm going to say in the future. Like, I have this power right now, which I don't abuse, that I can tell people anything and they'll believe me, at least my following, right? I don't do that because it's just who of I am, but I could, right? But I think that's the trust level we have to build with our audience, is being ahead of the curve. And then by being early adopters and being people that are ahead of the curve, we become the influencers for people. And then calling out the deception when we see it and saying, hey, check this out. This is what they're up to. Here's an example of where this happened in the past. Here's what's going to happen in the future. So I covered past, present, and future. But other than that, I think, to make people see the deception is really difficult, because the deception is practicing everything that's in my book, Dominate Twitter. It's like, how do you deal with a machine that's on 24/7, that's omniscient? It exists from the time you enter kindergarten. It exists from the time you turn on the television. It exists when you hand a child that iPad. It exists from the time you hand a child their first book. There's an agenda in there.
Right.
Right. So, for example, I bought a book, a book with, I think it's like 100 vocabulary words one should know. So I'm reading this book, and the examples of the definitions, I'm like, a socialist wrote this. Right? So this is a book that has nothing to do with politics, but they're playing on your subconscious with these example texts. So how do you combat something that's so omniscient and pervasive? It's in our school system. It's in our entertainment, right? Like, so framing is, it's like, you can say, do you think Donald Trump is bad? Or you can say, isn't Donald Trump really evil? It doesn't open, right? So, for example, they did this to Bernie Sanders. Whoopi Goldberg did a special with Bernie Sanders. And she didn't ask Bernie Sanders why, why are you running, right? She said, Bernie, why won't you drop out? Right? She didn't give him an opportunity to run. She said, why won't you drop out, Bernie? We want you to drop out. Right. I thought that was unfair framing.
Yes.
Like, damn, like you didn't even give the man a chance to run. You said, Bernie, why? And the way she said it, the tone was like, Bernie, why won't you drop out?
Well, did you see that Jordan Peterson interview with that British lady? And like every answer, and she owned him. And it was about, basically, she was like, she's basically like, don't you think that you're offending people? And then she like kept misstating what she's saying. And then she's like, well, you've been offending me this whole time, and you haven't said anything, and I haven't said anything about that. She's like, what do you have to say about that? She's like, well, I think I got you. You got me there. But the basic thing is, like, she was listening to what she was not listening to what he said, was already had an answer and said, you said this. We're like, no, I just said something completely different than that. Like, what conversation are we having here? And actually, to that point, when you're talking about media deception, The Hill, they were on the Joe Rogan podcast, those two hosts from The Hill. I don't know if you've seen that.
Okay, I'm not familiar with them.
But one of them was an old White House correspondent. Another one was an MSNBC host. Both of them left the business because they saw all of this agenda thing. And one of the things they were talking about, and I wanted to cover this in a video, is every single like host, like Chris Kumo, I forgot what his first name is. Chris Kumo, yeah, Don Lemon, whoever it is, they all have talking points that they're given, and they said this is the message of the day, and here are your talking points. Yeah. So when they peel back kind of what's going on behind the scenes, and you're like, there's no way there's narrative or agenda or whatever. These guys are literally given the message of the day and the talking points of the day. Yes. And so if that's the case, like how could you not believe that? And if that's true, then everything you're watching, you have to know that that's going on and saying, hey, I know they're trying to drive an agenda. What can I do knowing that to see all the other things going on?
Yeah. So this brings me to something else that you remind me of, something I teach people. There's information that was given to you and information that was given to yourself. It's information that others gave to you and information you discovered. I would be very leery of information that was given to you. A new article hits your timeline is not the same as you going to a search engine and looking for answers. It's not the same as you going to a library and looking for answers because you went to go search for it or you picked that book. It's not the information that's given to you, it's why it was given to you that is so sneaky. The information could be good, but it could also be a distraction, right? For example, we talking about riots and protests and all that stuff, right? But the Obama administration got 30 officials that were subpoenaed to appear in the Senate. Hillary Clinton has to appear in court on September 9th. Why is that not mainstream media news? That not to say that the protest isn't important and Black lives aren't important, but what about this other topic that's been getting a media blackout? You had to go look for that. I had to go look for it. And when we looked, there was only one article that covered it, one company, and it was just like, it wasn't anybody really popular. So I said, so you have to be careful of what's given to you as opposed to what you look for. I think you can only trust information that you search out, and you still can't trust it, obviously. But the other thing is, I say, look at the left, look at the right. The answer is somewhere in the middle. I mean, the truth is somewhere in the middle or omitted. So that's what I like to do is I like to see what the left is talking about, because the left is going to dig up the right's dirt. And I look at what the right's saying, and they're going to dig up the left's dirt. Right. And then now I got both of y'all.
Right. And speaking of that, another topic you've been talking about is Candace Owens and Charlamagne the God. He had a great interview with Joe Biden. It seems Charlamagne, so my thought on Charlamagne, I don't know him obviously. And, but my thought on it, looking at it from my perspective, is he's done with the Breakfast Club and he has his own thoughts right now about what's going on in the world. And when he gets onto his own platform, he's going to be a lot more open about these things. And I think his shot at Biden was the first one to say, hey, if you guys are going to do stuff, I want to see it. And to his point, he's going to have a list of things that he's going to ask for them to do. And so I think there is a shift, it seems like, in the Black community. I don't know if you could talk about this, but like there's Candace Owens, there's Charlamagne the God, there's Killer Mike, there's a bunch of other voices. Can you talk through like all the different things that are going on right now? Like you could touch on anything that you want, obviously, but it's just so interesting to see this dialogue playing out.
Yeah, you reposted something I tweeted and you posted on Instagram. I think I said something like, people follow agendas before they know themselves. Right. Right. That's huge, man. That's like so huge, because Candace Owens, Charlamagne, and, you know, Killer Mike, to me, are the same person. They got different agendas and different opinions, and they're on different political aisles. But I see a whole bunch of people I disagree with about a lot. I see a bunch of people I agree with a lot, but I just still see people. And I see people with different motives, obviously. I think that Killer Mike's heart is probably more in the right place than other people, but I don't think he has the intellectual capacity to lead us, right? Not to say he's not a smart individual. I just don't think he's thinking like others are, like myself, right? I think he's too left. think he's way too left. And I think it's maybe because he's an entertainer and, you know, whatever. I also don't think he's had the exposure to information I have. You know, I've been exposed to conversations with white nationalists. I've been exposed to conversations with straight up Republicans, and we've sat and we have discourse publicly and private. You know, I've spoken to people who would be deemed as Nazis, right? And I've honestly asked them, you know, even though they'd like to have my life eliminated, I wanted to understand their psyche, right? Then I can defeat you, right? I don't think these people have had as much exposure as I have to the right wing, to white people as I have, because of my leanings to the right. My ability to, I hate to use the word infiltrate, but to amalgamate with the right is probably better for the purpose of understanding. Marcus Garvey is one of those black leaders who back in the day called meetings with the KKK. The Nation of Islam had meetings with the Nazi Socialist Party in America, right? Not saying I agree with these groups, but I think if we don't have discourse, for example, back in the day when kingdoms warred, first one king sat down and had dinner with the other king. Right? And they said, hey, this is what I respect about you. This is what I don't like about you. They ate, they drank, they got drunk. And then the next day they hit the battlefield, right? That piece is missing today in war. We're not even talking to the other kingdom, right? We even see that today with politicians. We'll go and we'll sit down with Kim Jong-un, right? Or whatever dictatorship we're dealing with. Today, we don't have that at the lower levels of these influencers. You don't have, like, for example, I can't get a black liberal man to talk to me.
What are they saying to you? Like, they don't.
I get ignored. I'm sort of blackballed from the left, but I think what it is they're afraid that if black people, for example, Ebro at Hot 97 has said I'm banned from Hot 97. Can't give you a legitimate reason as to why, but he's come out and said it on Twitter, I'm banned from Hot 97. Now, Hot 97 is the New York radio station, right? Along 105.1 where Charlamagne is. He's cutting me off. This is a white man who's cutting me off from my core audience, from my black people, because he's in a position of power. Because I think that if people heard me, I'd put a lot of people out of business. And this is what Marcus Garvey said. He said, if people got in with the UNIA, a lot of these activists would be out of business. I love Killer Mike. Love the work he does. I love Candace Owens as a black woman. Don't agree with her motives, selfish ways sometimes, and her rhetoric. I think it's counterproductive to the goals that she says she has. She says she wants to pull black people over to the Republican Party. She's doing a horrible job of that. You know, she's pissing black people off. They hate her. They're making memes about her being Hitler. So obviously, you know, it's not aligning with what she says her goals are, you know. Charlamagne is an entertainer. I think Charlamagne and I are probably more closely aligned personality-wise than the other two.
You guys know each other? I think you guys would have an amazing discussion with each other. Yeah. So
I sat in a meeting with the Breakfast Club when I was working with 50 Cent, and we were trying to set up something business-wise. It didn't work out because I said some explicit things about DJ Envy before I got the job there. Okay. DJ Envy was like, yo, you were talking shit before you got this job, and now you up here working? I'm like, I still don't like you, but I like my company that I represent to do business with you because I understand the power you have. Right. If you can't separate those two, I understand. I'll leave right now. And Charlamagne was sitting to my right. I sat in the same room they record from, and Yee was to my left. And we had that conversation, and Charlamagne seemed like a level-headed individual. Charlamagne basically said to me, he said, hey, yo, just apologize to him. And I looked at Charlamagne and I said, okay, DJ Envy, I'm sorry. I apologize for saying those things about you. I still feel like you shouldn't have your job, though. Right?
Let me make something really clear.
Yeah. Like, you know, I'm going to be, you know, who I am, but I apologize for that. Maybe I was out of bounds. I have no problem being that bigger man. Yeah. But I think that Charlamagne is somebody who is hiding his power levels. like you said, and I think because of the Breakfast Club, and I think that he's recognizing his power. And like you said, he's probably going to branch off from the Breakfast Club and do great things on his own platform. And it's probably going to be more profitable for him too. Yeah. He won't have to wake up so early in the morning. It's probably going to be a better life for him. But I think Charlamagne's got a little bit of Hotep in him. I just think that the Charlamagne and Killer Mike are just too left for me. Mm. But again, I'd love to have that discourse. I don't know how to make that happen. I get blackballed. I even said to Tariq Nasheed today, I said, Tariq Nasheed, let's have discourse. I haven't heard back from him. He probably won't have that conversation with me. It's a lot of black left-leaning people, even women. I've had black women who were feminists back in the day, who've challenged some of my thoughts. And I said, well, let's debate. Let's talk online. Block. Because I don't think people want people, even the right, some people on the right hide me because they don't really want what's best for Americans. They want to keep winning this, political battle of talking points. And I kill talking points. I squash them.
You always win talking points because if you're in search of the truth, you always beat the talking points because you have to follow your agenda and talking points, good or bad. You have to ride with the team. So if you are truthful and like you said, if you capture the dirt on both sides, you can always be right, because you don't have to follow like all this, and you don't have to follow somebody all the way through all of their scandals, all the things they're saying. And at the end of the day, you're like, wait, you just accepted all of those things of that person. Like, how can anybody believe you at this point, anything you say?
Yeah. I used to, I like to terrorize Trumpers. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I'll tweet pro-Trump for 3 months straight. And when that full moon hit, I'll start criticizing the right and the conservatives and just watch people lose their mind, And it's so fun for me because it's just like, you thought I was in this box. You thought I was like the others. And it just goes to show you that they like to say, oh, the right is about free thinking. Oh yeah? Well, there's no room for free thinking for me though, right? Why is that? You don't like these opinions? Because you have to be in lockstep with the gang. And it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Like even with the gun conversation, the police reform conversation, I just made a video on YouTube and my thing was, this conversation is way more nuanced than left and right. This is very much Americans versus the state. And you can't say I'm against defunding the police, and you can't say I'm for defunding the police without adding conditions. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They just want to say, this is the left's idea, so we have to shut it down.
Right. Yeah, to that point, you wrote an article on Tulsi Gabbard, right, to deal with, I think, probably some of the things that you just mentioned. So, and you had some really good points on there. Care to expand on your viewpoint on why you think the Democrats should bring her in, or independents, or how do you see Tulsi Gabbard as like a good thing for America?
Yeah, I don't even remember what I said in the article. That was old, man, and I write so much. And I changed my mind so much. Jog my memory. What were some of the points?
You were basically, what some of the points you were talking about was, even if you don't disagree with a lot of the things, she's the least worst of that group.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and my thing was, the left was saying, white men are evil. White men are evil. Okay, cool. We have a woman who's a POC, right? And you've been hiding her. We saw when she hit the debate stage, she was trending higher than everybody. Right? So it goes to show you there's nothing democratic, because they basically blackballed her from the next debate because they saw how popular she was. Even with Bernie Sanders, they like to hide Bernie Sanders. He's popular, but they play games with the voting and how that stuff happens and how many representatives and all that type of stuff.
Right.
But with Tulsi, I just wanted to point out the hypocrisy of the left, to say, here you have a woman POC who seems to be more moderate than anybody, but you guys are trying to ignore her, right? And the only thing I don't like about Tulsi is or two things. One is I make this joke. I think she's a clone. I call her a clone. I'm like, yo, she came straight out of Treadstone, right? And I say that because when she speaks, it's almost like there's not a soul inside of her. Like there's no person inside her. She just seems very like blank. And I'm like, I think they created her in a lab. The other thing is she's on the Council of Foreign Relations. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far, but I think people need to research the Council of Foreign Relations conspiracy. And I'm not going to say anything else about that. I'll let you guys go down a rabbit hole. But she's on the Council of Foreign Relations, which says a lot about who she is behind the scenes and not so much as a House of Representative. But yeah, my thing was just the hypocrisy of the left and how they said, oh, white men are evil. And here we are, right. Who they elect, old white man.
And he's not like clean at all. I mean, he has so much stuff. I'm just like looking, I'm like, listen, and even the things of like how they're dealing with the sexual harassment stuff. I'm just like, I'll believe all women, all this stuff. I'm just like, how are you going to spin through this right now? And then I saw him on The View and I was just like, those women are vicious. Like Joy Behar. Oh my God. I don't know how anybody can like that woman. Yeah. But when they were talking about that, I was like, how are they going to spin out of this one? And he was just like mumbling around, talking about stuff that had nothing to do with that. And it ended up saying, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he said, I'm sorry and not sorry in the same sentence. So it's just like,
it's believe all women unless we need this guy to win the election so we can defeat the right. It's all about, defeat Trump is more important than believe all women.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, I'm not even saying that it's true or not. Probably is. I don't care. The point is, let it be the same for both sides. The same set of rules, same standards for those, and it isn't the same standards. So I want to talk about this too, because when I read your book, I didn't know you were a rapper or you were a musician. I actually didn't know that. Yeah. That's why I know you're going to be a superstar, because there's like so many different facets to what you're doing, because you write books, you have a podcast, you could do music, you have a career in politics or media, anything you want there too. Yeah. You play on this creativity. I also like to do music too. I obviously started a podcast. I want to start doing comedy. I think that has a common thread with entrepreneurship too. Mm-hmm. So what about the creative process do you like, and what do you do to like scratch that itch?
So let's talk about why I became a rapper first of all.
Okay.
So I think the year was 1998, and my friend at the time was freestyling. For people who don't know what freestyling is, you're rapping off the top of the head, no written pre-rehearsed lyrics. You got to rhyme off the top. How do you pronounce your name?
Shahan.
I said, I'm here with the Don. His name is Shahan. You know what I mean? Like that ability to just do that really fast. It intrigued me. I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I wanted to learn that art, but I didn't want to be a rapper. I wanted to be Diddy, right? They used to call me B Diddy, my friends. So my friends were rappers and I was the manager. I was the intellectual side of things. I was the corporate side of things. And eventually I started selling mortgages. So I was funding this stuff. Was funding our record label and paying for some of the things that we had to do. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult managing people who A, didn't trust you, B, wouldn't let you do your job, always wanted to challenge, right? It was like, you rap, just rap.
Right.
Let me handle the business, right? And they always wanted to tell me how to run the business. But then when I told them how to rap, they didn't like that. But I was telling them from a business perspective how to make their music more marketable, how to make themselves more marketable. And they just wouldn't listen. But what happened was my main artist got incarcerated. And from a music business perspective, I was now unemployed. But no artist, you got no record label, right? So I put music aside. And then one of their friends, it's ironic, this is their friend, who me and him didn't get along. So what happened was the rapper, so my friend Demick was more like the business-minded guy of things, and they went to high school with him, but they were signed to me. So he always looked at me like, he's this shiesty business guy. Fast forward, my friend's in jail, or our friend is in jail, and he had similar problems where they weren't listening to him. And he knew I was having those problems. And he called me up out the blue. He said, B, what you doing? I'm like, nothing. You know, I'd started the photography business and I was doing that to keep my time occupied. And, you know, I'm just an entrepreneur. I'll pick things up and just launch a business in 5 minutes, you know? And he hit me up. He said, I'm about to shoot a music video in Orlando. You want to come? I'm like, bro, I'm broke. I ain't got it. He was like, we're driving and I got you. And I'm like, let's go. So I didn't really know this guy that well. I knew him well enough to spend time with him and hang out with him. I didn't know him well enough like that. When you're driving 24 hours with somebody in the car, you get to know him really well. When you're, you know, it was his dad and his friend, and we're in the back and we're scrunched up together, equipment. So you got to get to know somebody. So way down we go. And then we shoot this music video. So I'm in the music video. They're putting makeup on me. We shot it at Full Sail. I don't know if you know, are you familiar with Full Sail?
No.
But Full Sail, it's a music and film school. It's for creative mostly, and they have an accelerated master's program, and he was a part of that. And he already got his master's, but we used that facility. His brother was in film, so his brother was shooting our thing. So I'm there. They got dancers, choreographer. They got the pool scene. We're at this, Hollywood type set with fake buildings in the background, but you can't tell. And I'm shooting, and I'm in this video, and I'm driving this BMW. And I'm like, yo, I could get used to this. This is fun. So then we drive back. On the way back, he's like, bro, you ever thought about rapping? I'm like, I mean, I thought about it, but I wasn't like taking it serious, like to be an artist. I don't want to be a rapper. I want to be a business guy.
Right.
He's like, well, let's form a group. So we formed a group, Demic in Boston. And I mean, when we talk about success, we had so much success, I didn't want to rap anymore. Because I remember Jay Mills, he was signed to Lil Wayne. And he said the first time he performed for thousands of people was when he was with Lil Wayne. And Jay Mills is somebody I was like, I thought was on. Like I saw him with Diddy on TV and all these things. He had never performed for somebody in front of thousands of people. This is something we did on a monthly basis.
Wow.
We were on 3 tours. We did a car show tour, and we did a monster truck tour, which we got kicked off of because we had a song called Obama, and we know what monster truck crowd is. That's all.
Wrong crowd, yeah.
Yeah, wrong crowd. And I told him this. I was like, yo, we should not do this song. And he's like, fuck that. We're going to do Obama. Fuck these crackers. You know, the old redneck thing. So we got kicked off the tour, but we did that tour. We did the monster truck tour. We put our own TGI Fridays tour. We called TGI Fridays Corporate and got permission to use their logo. And we started performing at TGI Fridays. But we were doing, car show tours, and then we were opening for people. And eventually we started running the tour because the MTV host at the time canceled. There was some contract problems. So I became the host of the show. My friend became the host of the show. So we were running the tour. So when we looked at the success we had with our artists who had exponentially more talent than us, I mean, these guys could write a song. You'd be in a car like, oh my God, I feel this. We didn't have that talent, but we had way more success because we understood the business side of things. We understood the business side of creating a song. So we were creating what we call call and response songs, where we say one part of the hook and the audience could get it. It was easy and catchy. So we put out an album, had really great success. We were touring. And then I ended up getting with 50 Cent because I created this blog. What I want to do was get more eyes on our music. So I said, look, we'll create. My friend gave me the idea to do a blog. That was Demic. So I started doing a blog, and it was an entertainment blog. It started off with like gossip, like Britney Spears was screwing such and such. I just wanted the hits. Then it evolved into just music, and then in just hip hop, and then it moved into pop as we got more writers. Right. But at one point we were up to like, 1 million visitors a month, right? Wow. A million uniques. And I want to say 1 million impressions daily, based upon the SEO and all of that.
And it has a tragic ending because I know what happened to it.
I know, yeah.
I read it in the book and I was just like, oh no. Because like search engines love that stuff too, especially if they're old links and old websites.
Oh my God. It was like building the Taj Mahal and then destroying it. And
Got looted, rioted, and burned down.
yeah, by yourself, right?
Yeah.
All because of my own ideological changes, because I became all holy and shit. And I didn't agree with the music that was on my website, and I went through the spiritual awakening. But whatever, yeah. But I did that, and I started doing native advertising. So we started getting music, native advertising. You came for the Wiz Khalifa song, and you heard mine, you know? So, we had all this experience. But you asked me, would I rap in the future? I mean, once you're a rapper, you're always a rapper. You can't help but to make things rhyme in your head. But I think the key takeaway was, I remember I had to do, I have a dream speech at my grandma's church, and I was probably under 10. And I got up there. I had rehearsed it a million times. I knew it. Got up on that podium. I started crying. I had stage fright. When I was 17 years old, we had to do a presentation in chemistry. I started crying. I was a guy who had stage fright. 17 years old, crying in front of your senior class. You know how embarrassing that is?
Yeah.
Oh my God. But being a rapper, I remember one of our first shows, I froze up, forgot my lyrics. But once you do something over and over again, so by the time we finished the tour, one person, it was actually harder to perform for a small crowd than it was a larger crowd. I remember one time we performed for 2 people. We had a show during the day, and it was and then we had a tour at night, a tour stop at night. The night show was thousands of people, but the day show was in Asbury Park, and it was more of a rock scene. And it was 2 white folks that were probably boomers. And we were performing this hip hop music for 2 boomers in this small room. And it was the hardest thing I ever did, but we did it. They clapped and we had fun. Just us 2 and these 2 boomers. And then later that night I performed for 2,000 people, right? But that 2 people was so hard. It just felt weird. It's more intimate, right? But I'm not Hotep Jesus without that. I don't get on YouTube and destroy camera fright without that experience. Do I have plans to release an album one day? I do. I think there are things I'd love to say in a rap format that would resonate differently than being an orator or a lecturer. It hits different when you buy it.
By the way, I'm the first one to buy the album. So because I'm just thinking, there might be great rappers or whatever. Maybe you go head to head with them. Maybe they're a little better. Who knows? But your mind no one can compete with that. And so it's just a matter of you practicing to get to that level again. But like the lines that you can throw out, like I'm just thinking of these different battles. I recently watched Machine Gun Kelly and Eminem.
Oh yeah, Machine Gun won.
Yeah, he definitely won. But I was just like, if you had written a rap, it would have been 10 times better than that. You could have gone way deeper. And you could have like hit it on a bunch of different things. And so like, I think eventually you should do it, right? Obviously do whatever you want. But as a fan, I listened to the song Winner, I think it was. I really like that song. Oh, yeah. That's a really good song. But I think
watched the video?
Yeah, I watched the video too. Yeah.
You saw the burning Nikes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I've always been that dude, right? Like I've always been that conscious dude where I was like, yo, they're paying black people $2 a day in Asia to make these sneakers. I'm burning my Jordans. Right. And the black community was like, what are you, crazy? I'm like, y'all missed this message?
But I definitely think you should do that if you want to. I think I got many albums in you over time. But I had one more thing I wanted to cover, and then any other topics you want to cover. But one of the things that you talked about, again, I really like this topic we're talking about around framing. And I think framing yourself with a positive mindset, a growth mindset is extremely important. And I think a lot of the people that follow you and don't want to listen don't see what you're doing and may think that what you're doing is negative or is provocative or whatever it may be. But it's actually you're pushing them and forcing them to think towards a positive direction. And unless you take time to, like you said, shut up, listen, absorb, and then take time to then respond, you're not going to understand that. So what's like a positive message that you have for people, a way to think about things? I know there's so many things that are being thrown out at people, but you really can control your life. And you can have responsibility and discipline for the things that are going on in your life. What's a message you have, a positive message that you can leave with people?
A positive message that I can leave with, that's a tough question, because I'm not a positive person. I feed off of negativity. Maybe because I've dealt with negativity so much in my life that I've learned to transmute it. I like to take negative stuff and then transmute it, right? So for me, positive is shut the fuck up. My bad for the language, my bad. But to me, that's positive, right? To say, I think we'd have to go to the ultimate vibration of positivity, which is love, right? And I think that in all aspects of our life and events and things that happen in our daily lives, try to look at it through a love lens. Try to look at things through somebody else's lens, and then find a way to find empathy, even if you don't agree, right? So like with liberals, they say, police brutality is an issue. And I go, not really. If we went by the statistics, it's not. Do I think that black people are treated unfairly by cops? Absolutely. But way more people die from heart disease, and we ain't talking about health. And health is a big part of the Hotep community. And I think where you find health, you find wealth. But kind of lost where I was going with that.
You're talking about positivity and how, it's, you're thinking more about how people can frame things or how they can take things in a particular direction.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, so liberals, right? I don't say anymore, I made this mistake. I used to say, no, it's not an issue, that's not persuasive, right? As Scott Adams would say, it's not a good way to persuade people. Instead, I empathize first, and I go, do they have a legitimate gripe? They do. We saw the video. So we can't dismiss people's problems and their gripes. Who says my issue is more important than the next? Right. Who is the arbiter of this? Right. It's unfair to be the arbiter of what people deem as important. It's wholly unfair to say what you're talking about is not important. No, it is important. If it's important to them, it's important to all of us. Right? Because it's going to come a time where you say, I don't like being quarantined. And then you're mad when they don't have empathy towards you. Yeah. Right? So I think we have to first put ourselves in other people's shoes. This is what helps me, understand and think through things. But put yourself in other people's shoes first and foremost. Empathize and say, you know what? The statistics say one thing, but if this hurts you, come give me a hug, bro. Right. Virtually, empathize and say, I'm sorry for your loss. You can't tell people what should hurt them and what shouldn't. You can't do that. Some things affect some people differently. Not much affects me, but the things that do don't affect others. So I think we have to first realize that people are human beings with emotions. And some people say, facts don't care about emotions. Well, emotions don't care about your facts. Right? Right? So that quote works inversely as well. But that's my message, man. Shut up and listen, empathize, argue later. Arguing ain't gonna get us nowhere. But if you first say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna walk side by side with you on this issue. I ain't saying you gotta show up to the protest. I ain't saying you gotta take a knee. I ain't saying white people gotta wash our feet like I saw them doing online. But I think that this was a missed opportunity for conservatives, Republicans, and right-leaning people. This was a huge missed opportunity. We saw an American, regardless of his past, get done dirty. Breonna Taylor, somebody was shot while they were sleeping in their home. You can't bring up her past. You can't say she wasn't, conducting herself in a bad manner. Was there empathy? Did you put out the hashtag R.I.P. Breonna Taylor, or I send my condolences. Imagine if 3 prominent right-wing people, or right-wing is the wrong word to use because we know what that means technically, conservative-leaning people organized and said, you know what? Let's send best wishes to the Black people that are hurting right now because of Breonna Taylor or George Floyd. You'd make a fool out of a lot of Democrats.
Yes.
Because they painted this picture of you that said you don't have empathy, that said you don't care about Black lives. And you had the opportunity this week to destroy that narrative, and you lost it,
right? Which
only reinforced the narrative they paint for their ideological slaves. And I just looked at it like, damn, y'all, we could have really like won this cultural battle this week. But instead you chose to say, hey, I'm anti-protest and this, that, and you stuck to your talking points. But yeah, man, that's it, man. Just take a moment to empathize, even if it's somebody you don't agree with. You know, I had a conversation with Lunch Money Lewis, and Lunch Money Lewis had some choice words for me. I forget what they were on Twitter. And he's a blue check guy, and I challenged him. He's got a hit record, you know, Billboard. And I challenged him. I said, well, let's debate. We got him. We just talked it out. And come to find out, we agreed on like 90% of the things. You know?
Oh, man, that's exactly my point. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Or even if you don't, you're just like, oh, you just took all of the edge off that, right? Like, you know, there's no more punch to what they're saying. It's like, oh, no. Oh, I get it. Because it goes back to also, I was talking to a friend about this too, of like, who's framing what's moral? Because the evangelicals used to own that space. This is right, this is wrong, this is moral, this is not. Now I think that's shifted to the left has now controlled what is moral. And so therefore, if you disagree with something, not only are you wrong, you're immoral. And I think that's where a lot of this is missed too, is just like, no, you know, I don't think that's the right thing. I think here's where I think morality comes from. And if we don't even agree if there's a God or not God, or don't even agree on the same God, how are we agreeing to the same set of morals? There has to be a way to your point, where you can empathize, understand, and listen to say there's a community of ideas, and we all have to be able to express those ideas and live in a world where those ideas could exist. And I think another point that you really made that was great was these rights are given to us by God. These are not something that the government gives you. That's a centralized authority, then can control those rights, who should then be given by God. So, you know, I listen to what you say, man. I really like what you have to say.
You made me think of a new hashtag. We want to call it manga, right? And manga means make nuance great again.
There we go.
You know, with tweeting, you can only add but so much nuance, right? So, you know, I'll tweet something and then I'll run to YouTube or Periscope and add nuance to it. When I tweeted it, the conservatives didn't agree. When I added nuance to it, all of a sudden I had a whole lot of conservatives that were supporting reparations. And we know how they feel about reparations. But when I said Dems must pay, they go, yeah. Right? You see how I frame that? Because what do they say? They say, oh, Democrats are, you know, they put LBJ and the New Deal and the welfare state and the KKK and slavery. They say all these things about the Democratic Party. So I said, you know, we deserve reparations. No, you don't. Cool. Let me hop on Periscope and explain. I hop on Periscope and I say, well, the Democratic Party did this, did this, did this. Here's the new hashtag, Dems must pay. All of a sudden, I got a whole bunch of conservatives typing in "Dems must pay," and now they're pro reparations. I had to frame it a little bit to fit inside their little box, but I accomplished the impossible. You know,
you're the puppet master. Yeah, I see it, man. Game recognizes game, man. I see it. Even your Starbucks thing, as you said last time, I'm just like, oh my God, he's just like playing the piano on their brains right now.
I mean, if you're going to act like a sheep, I know how to be a shepherd. You know, pastor in Spanish, I believe, means shepherd. And some people are going to be sheep. And that's the thing. Had I not listened to the right, do I come up with Dems must pay? Do I know how to play puppet master with them? Nah, I first had to come to their side and listen and side with them a little bit. Yeah, I'm on your side. I really just want to listen in, you know, and understand what's going on. But yeah, you know, there's no nuance allowed today. And tweet 140 characters, 280 characters, whatever it is now, there's no nuance can fit in those characters. So I think the first thing we have to do is when somebody tweets something you don't agree with, ask questions. When I tweet something and people don't ask questions, I'm like, honest questions, I don't give them my time. When I see somebody tweet something I don't agree with, I ask questions because I want to learn more.
Right.
Before I jump to conclusions. And that's what we don't see a lot of.
I think that's the perfect message to send out is, make nuance great again. I think that's a great hashtag. And understanding people, having empathy for people, not jumping to your side's talking points, ask questions. I think to your point, people who think you disagree with the most, if you talk to them, at least you'll get what their framing is, or like how they build the framework up to where their thought is today. And if that makes sense, you're like, oh, okay, it's not for that reason they do. They don't actually hate me. They actually hate XYZ. And that's the reason why they came to this conclusion. They had a bad experience here, which is not representative of all these things. So it's just like, those are the things that I think are important. Yeah.
Can I add some historical context here?
Yeah.
Don't remember the year. Don't remember the president. But at one point in America, there was two parties. I think one was the Whig Party, another one was the Dixiecrats. And I'm not sure if they were Republicans or Democrats at the time, but there was a third party. Mm-hmm. And the third party was called the Anti-Mason Party.
Okay.
And the Anti-Mason Party was picking up a lot of steam because real Americans knew that the Democrats and the Republicans were controlled by Freemasonry. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but we know what comes with that, right? But this is a very real thing. This is very real historical context, no matter what you believe with conspiracy theories. But there was, in fact, an anti-Mason party, and they started picking up steam. Now, how did the anti-Mason party get defeated? Well, what they did was they split the party. I forget if it was Republicans or Democrats. I want to say it was the Whig Party. But what they did was they picked a candidate that was also anti-Freemason. And it destroyed the anti-Freemason party and movement because they said, well, here's a guy representing our views, so we can vote for him. And really what it did was, it wasn't so much that everybody that was anti-Freemason ran to him. It just split it enough that it destroyed the power of the party. And I don't think people need to create an anti-Mason party per se, but I think it's time for all Americans to realize it's time to be independent.
Absolutely. In every kind of way. And I think that's actually going to heal the nation, because being an independent requires you to look inside and think about what is important to you, not how you're perceived and the values that you push out to the public in terms of how you want to perceive the things that you stand for. I think social media, the bad thing that it did is like it created this fake persona of people. And then it never gives you the chance to work on yourself, be quiet with yourself, be with your own thoughts, all the things you were talking about meditation, to have actual goals that you can feel that you can go towards and lead towards, instead of focusing on stuff that's not going to improve your life. Whoever's in office is not going to change your life. You have to change everything about your life. And no matter, and the thing is, if you're pointing to the government and saying they're all the problems, that same person that has all the problems is not going to solve all your problems. And the other thing is, you think there's so much systemic racism, corruption, all these things. Those people are going to solve the problems. I don't see how that is. It's the community. It's you. It's talking to people. It's having conversations and then saying, hey, government, here are the things that we want. You get them done or you're out. Yeah. And that's the way I think to go about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks a lot, man. So follow Hotep Jesus. I have some links of the things you covered. I'd love to do this again, as we talked about last time when these restrictions.
Let me just add here. My personal time is very expensive. I charge about $150 an hour, or starting at $250 to $2,500 a month retainer. That's very expensive, especially for startups and so on and so forth, to hire me, especially in the early stages. And entrepreneurs and just people who need advice. I created this new program. It's called the Mogul Summit. And we meet every Saturday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time to about 1:30. We go over a lot of the time. I have no problem giving people more of my time. That's $97 a month, or I think it's $40.97 for the year. I think it's the best way for people to work with me. I know a lot of people want to pick my brain, so on and so forth. I don't have a lot of time to give everybody my individual time. I've been screwed in the past. I think we talked about that. But that program, I think, is the best way to work with me at the most affordable price. I mean, think about a startup paying me, you know, $150 an hour as opposed to $100 a month.
Right.
For 2 hours on a Saturday where they can spitball and ask as many questions that they want. And not only that, it's a mogul summit, which means that other entrepreneurs in other different areas are there. And you don't just have me giving you advice. You have other professionals who are great in other areas. So I'm not a specialist in many different areas, but there are specialists there. You know, we have someone who specializes in email marketing. We have someone who specializes in content marketing, you know, different parts of the business. And they're able to just kind of like dive in a little bit deeper on some of these topics. You got one dude who specializes in, he knows every single tool out there to automate and do great things. Right. So he's like, there's a tool for that. There's a tool for that. There's a tool for that. Right. For example, my homie was making t-shirts and he had to manually cut people out. I'm like, yo, go to remove.bg and enter the picture and it automatically removes the background. When I showed it to him on my phone in 10 seconds, he looked at me like, bro, you know how much time you just saved me?
Yeah, I use that too. Yeah. For my thumbnails. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah. For the thumbnails. Yeah. So, you know, I say that because if there's anybody else out there who wants to work with me and wants to pick my brain and really want to get help, that's the best way to do it. briansharp.co/summit. We meet. I've never missed a meeting yet. I'm always on time, 11:30 on the dot. And it's a really great group. We even got, like, I can't reveal the people that are in this group, but there's some people in this group that are in some high places, you know, wealthy people who just come to hang out, man. They don't ask questions. They don't ask me no questions, but they soak up all the knowledge. Like there's one dude that came, he's like, yo, I didn't ask no questions today, but I have like 2 pages of notes, right? And people just come because, you know me, once I get going, I'm spilling all the beans. And I'm the type of person where I don't tell people anything. Like I don't teach on Twitter really, you know. I feel like I made that mistake with my book where I gave away too many secrets. It's out there now, fine. You can pay $50 for it. But I'm here now where I'm only going to work with people that are willing to invest in themselves. And I think that cuts down on a lot of people that want to leech off of my brain, you know? So put your money where your mouth is. It's very affordable, $97. Join the program and come work with us. And you're going to see your whole life transform. Because I got dudes in there now that's just like, I got one kid, he did 14,000 followers in a week.
Wow.
I know 2 weeks, amidst all of this, right? And he's like, man, your book is amazing. You know? But I think it helps. Like I had this one dude, Coach Joe. I just want to tell a story real fast and I'm gonna go. I don't know if I told us in the last podcast. Coach Joe came to me, he had like 600 followers and he was a shit poster on Twitter. He bought my book, had a lot of questions. And because he's one of the early people that bought my books, I gave him my time. And we spoke. And what I noticed was Coach Joe had way more success than other people than people that actually had a chance to speak to me and compare things in the book to my brain, right? Coach Joe makes $10,000 a month right now. Coach Joe started in August of 2018. At the end of that month, I think he had 1,000 followers. Right now, I want to say he's probably on his way to 50. I don't know what he's at. Definitely 20K followers. Yeah. He's got over 800 people in his program. He can't even manage his program. He created this program for eBay marketing. He can't even manage the damn thing because there's so many people. He done sold so many packages. But this guy's doing 10 grand a month. This was a guy who was working for like a coin shop in his basement, in their basement, and wasn't really making good money, wasn't suffering. But when they let him go, he was happy. He was like, oh, I get to devote more time to Twitter, right? But this guy is revving 10K a month or better. Wow. From working with me. And the difference was, I think, because not only he had the book, but he had access to me. And of course, you have access to me. You bought the book. We homies. Call me if you got questions. We can talk. Yeah. But, you know, for people that want to really find success, get the book. The program comes with the book. So when you join the summit, you get the book automatically. You get my list of trigger words that come along with it as well. Smash mouth trigger words. So yeah, that's what I think. If anybody wants to work with me, I just want to say how you can work with me, so people aren't contacting me asking me how they can work with me.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing I would say to those that are listening, I think that it's a no-brainer to do this. I'm going to look at it myself right after this, because you provide so much value. You get to, like we talked about, nuance. You get to the nuances of business. You know how to aggregate experts to solve specific problems. And I think that's really important, especially as a founder. You don't know what you don't know. There are so many different things within the process. Like, for example, we were talking before we got on the podcast, like I was incorporating my company. There's a lot of stuff that's doing, if you're going to get funding, you have to set it up in a certain way. How do you pitch to investors? These are along the same problems I'm solving. The thing that we're missing is like a lot of the experts that are associated with this. And I think that's what you guys are providing. And I think that's really important at $100 a month to have access to that kind of brain power. I mean, why would you spending on that, on other stuff? You know, it's a few times going out to have that much information and to drive that much forward. And I know this for a fact, that if you talk to experts, you save money, you save time, you save resources, and headache of entrepreneur. No matter what, you're going to have a headache. But if you can start seeing those things and not jumping in things that other people did that wasted so much time, and you could have succeeded if you hadn't done those things, that's super, super important.
Yeah, hell yeah, absolutely. You know, some people make fun of people. They go, "Oh, you guys sell these courses, you guys sell these books." I'm like, you know how much money I spent on my own education? You know, like y'all making fun of these free ebooks or sold ebooks. I'm like, I bought a lot of those. I am who I am because I spent $2,000 on, you know, Neil Patel's course or whatever it was, right?
Right. Plus countless people you talk to that you got information from too.
Yeah. But I mean, I went to a lot of sources. I paid, you know, there's a bunch of courses I bought. I remember one time I bought a course that was probably overpriced compared to what it's worth now. I only bought it for like one little piece of information, but I have no problem dropping $250 for this one little information that's going to make me $10,000, right? It's an investment. It's an investment, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate you. Everything, all the wisdom you provide. I learn so much every time that we have a chance to speak. And so thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me, man.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate it.